Hi everybody, this is Noelle from Petitti's, and we are talking holiday houseplants today. We're going to go over general care for holiday houseplants and how you can keep them for hopefully longer in your homes besides just the holiday season. So to start out with light, we always talk about light conditions for indoor houseplants, and it's usually full sun condition, bright light, medium indirect light, and low indirect light. And for most of these holiday houseplants that you see here on the table, they really do very nicely in that bright indirect lighting. So that the way you get to that point is it's actually a wide open northern exposure window. So you get kind of wraparound light when it comes through the northern window. It doesn't want to be obstructed. Just a clear open northern window is really, really great for that bright indirect lighting. If you have an eastern or western or southern window, that's okay, but of course you're getting direct sunlight through there. So if you have a diffusing type curtain, or if you can pull the plants about 5 feet away from that window, that's going to be really nice. And again, a good bright indirect spot for them. Now, I will tell you that some of the evergreens that you see over here, they can take more sun, so they can take some direct lighting, but I wouldn't go full sun on them. And also the Christmas cacti can take a little bit more direct light, but again, part day of shade is really the most that you want to expose them to sunlight. The other thing that I forgot to mention with all these plants is make sure you're rotating, especially when you have larger bulbs like this Amaryllis in the background. When you start to get those large stems, they will start to move towards the light. So make sure you continue to rotate that pot so you get nice even growth with your stems and your foliage. But that really falls true with a lot of your houseplants. I would say all of your houseplants, okay? The next thing that you want to remember is that with all of these plants, with the exception I'd say for the phalaenopsis orchid, is they're all using a standard potting soil mix, okay? So you want a well-drained mix. You want to make sure that that water is continually moving away from the root system. None of these plants want to stay wet for long, and you definitely don't want them to be sitting in water. So pots with drainage holes, watering them thoroughly to moisten the soil and let it drain out, watering them one more time again, moistening the soil and letting it drain out, and then putting it back into its spot is really the best way to take care of these plants. Reapply water when they become very light or they start to show signs of wilting because of their dryness, or maybe you stick your finger in about the top inch of soil and it feels very dry to you. That's a good indication that they probably need to be re-watered. Okay, so pay attention to that. And again, watering indoors, I'd say always use just water that is at room temperature. So if you fill up the watering can the night before, let it sit on the counter, and then go ahead, it'll warm up to room temperature, but it'll also give a chance for chlorine and fluoride and all those things that we put in our tap water to evaporate as well. So that's good too. The next thing is humidity, and we often overlook the fact that when our furnaces and things are circulating air throughout the house, it's usually hot, dry air, and that, of course, decreases your humidity in the home. So making sure that you increase the humidity around all of these plants and any of your house plants is always going to be really beneficial. And we're talking increasing up around 60%, 70%, even 80% humidity is really, really great for these guys. So make sure that you can cluster them together. So it's always nice to make sort of an arrangement of your holiday house plants and your other house plants. When you put the plants together, they create more humidity. Or you can set them on a tray of pebbles, which we call a humidity tray. Fill that tray up with water just to the top of the pebbles, and then set the plants right on top of those pebbles and that water will naturally evaporate around the plant material, of course, creating a humid condition. So that's always really good to think about too. Guess what? You don't have to worry about fertilizing over the holidays, and really during the winter months. Houseplants do not require any fertilizer at that time. You will want to start feeding them regularly, usually around the end of March, beginning of April. As the day length increases, you'll start to see those plants kind of perk up, if you will, and then you can start your fertilizer regimen at that time. The only other thing that we really talk about during the winter months taking care of these holiday houseplants is pruning. So you do want to continue to deadhead or pull off or cut, yellow areas, damaged areas, diseased areas. So do keep that in the back of your mind as you're looking through your plants, watering, going through daily maintenance and so forth, scouting for any issues that are out there. But really we just prune, and we'll take a clean, sharp pair of scissors or pruners and go through and clip and clean where we need to. Okay, so that's a general care for your holiday house plants. Okay, for evergreens, let's talk about those. So again, Blue Point Juniper, this is a small spruce. This is a wintergreen plant. This is your mophead cypress or yellow mop cypress here. These four are all hardy, cold hardy. So they'll grow outdoors during the summer season, but survive outdoors as well. So again, enjoy them inside for their evergreen feel, their shape, their structure, even their scent, because they are highly scented and they look lovely indoors, but just keep them cool, keep them on even moisture. Do not let them sit in water. They will rot very, very quickly. And make sure that they dry out just slightly before you reapply water. Once we get into springtime, you can go ahead and plant these outside and they will grow and thrive, no problem whatsoever. This false holly is called goshiki, and it is a beautiful creamy and green mottled, like I said, false holly. This one is not quite hardy in Northeast Ohio. It's about a zone 7. So if you can keep it cooler inside the house and keep it in a cooler area, but protected area outside, it may do well for you. But again, this one's kind of marginally hardy, taking care of it as you would the other evergreens. Same thing with lemon cypress. Unfortunately, it is not hardy in Northeast Ohio to survive our winters, but if you keep it protected, you do have a chance of this one continuing to grow and thrive for you. Now, you all know this one. This is our classic Norfolk Pine, and I'll always tell you, Norfolk Pine, you want to make sure that you are touching. And really, with any of these softer evergreens, touch the needles. And if you're finding that you're getting poked or the needles are very, very dry, that is a good indication that they probably need their humidity increased around them, or that they are on the drier side of watering. It's the same thing with the Norfolk Pine. As long as these needles are soft and aren't poking you, you're good. Humidity is high enough. You usually have a good moisture level in the soil as well, okay? Norfolk pines can get some brown tips and things in the house. Go ahead and trim them off. If your Norfolk pine is getting very, very large, normally we don't recommend pruning them because they can grow 2 liters or other things can happen with them. But they can, if you have a small immature leader and you want to try to pinch this back and try to force energy into the plant so it will eventually kind of slow down the growth, but eventually start to take off again. You can do that with Norfolk pine, no problem, okay? Another plant that you want to stay cool, and I have an Amaryllis behind me too, are any of your bulb plants that you're growing for holidays. This is a florist cyclamen, okay? And the cyclamen, at the base of their leaves, they have a nice bulb that's sticking out of the soil. And all of these buds and so forth are coming up from the bulb. But again, this is a plant that would really appreciate staying on the cooler side, as all bulbs do. The longer you can keep them cool, the longer they are going to bloom for you and stay in color for you. Cyclamen really like to be watered from the base. So if you don't have any holes in your pot or your pot cover, you can go ahead and place water right down in the bottom or in a saucer, and then place that cyclamen right on top of the water so it will absorb the water from the base. We don't want to get the bulb wet. That is key with cyclamen, with paper whites, with amaryllis. Trying to keep that bulb drier, especially on the top half of the bulb, is very, very important. You don't want that bulb to rot, okay? The other thing with cyclamen that I really like is they'll tell you when they're dry. They will wilt when they are dry, and as soon as you bottom water them, they will perk back up very, very quickly. The other thing that is nice to know about cyclamen is, let's say you have an expired flower, go ahead and go down to the base of the flower stem and literally pluck that flower, from the bulb, and that will actually start developing a nice new growth area where a new flower stem can develop. So keep that in mind. That works the same thing with peace lilies. Once this flower is expired, go ahead and reach all the way down into the plant, separate it from its leaf that it is growing from, and go ahead and just pluck that stem. Just use some good force, pluck it from the base. And again, that will produce more new growth that will produce another flower for you. This guy is a frosty fern, and we love frosty ferns. They're actually not a fern at all. They're actually a club moss, but they're a great soft house plant to have, especially during the holidays. We'll usually nest birds and things inside frosty fern. The botanical name is Selaginella, and you will see sometimes that they produce their own air roots here. So as you turn this pot around, you'll see some of those white air roots. And this plant, again, because we're referring to it as a fern, guess what? It loves high humidity. So this is a great plant for a bright bathroom or kitchen where you're getting some of that humidity, especially every day, okay? Poinsettias, again, bright light, very easy to grow. You can use ice cubes to water these plants, but you always want to keep that water, again, on the drier side. Make sure that they're not getting too wet, and they'll be fine for you. The Christmas cacti, again, because it is a zygocactus, it can stay a little bit on the drier side of watering. Just make sure you're watching out for the leaves. If they're turning red, if they're getting wrinkled, it's probably too much light, too much heat, and getting on the dry side. So again, don't get to that point. Make sure that they don't get wrinkled because, again, you've got to start your watering maintenance up again, and you don't want to overwater at that point. The phalaenopsis orchid we see a lot during the holidays, especially the white types. And so what you're looking for here with phalaenopsis is a medium green leaf. If it gets really dark and limp, it usually means that they are getting overwatered. I would always recommend that you water your orchids and really any of your houseplants in the morning, but especially orchids, they need the entire day to absorb that water. So keep that in mind. High humidity as well. And again, a good temperature difference between night and day. So if you do have that cooler window where maybe it gets up to 70 degrees during the day, but it drops down to 60 or 55 at night. That temperature difference really helps phalaenopsis orchids produce more flowering stems. So keep that in mind. Peace lilies here, out of all of these plant materials, can take the lowest amount of light. So again, they can grow, they will bloom nicely for you in bright indirect light. If they get sunlight or too much light on them, they'll start to yellow, so keep that in mind. These guys, again, I think are fabulous in that medium to low indirect light range. So again, in areas where you don't have a lot of natural light, dark corners, that type of thing, peace lilies do a very, very nice job. Again, have a good indicator when they get dry. Those leaves will start to wilt. You go ahead and thoroughly water them again, and they will perk up within 30 minutes to an hour after you've watered them. There is a variegated type here. This is domino. So again, just depending if you want a little bit of leaf color or if you like the nice green glossy leaves is really up to you. And then this last one that's a little less traditional is the anthurium, and they're starting to become very, very popular in the plant world because of how long they bloom. Some of these flowers can stay on this plant for 9 months, a year, very, very long time. They are a bright to medium indirect lighting plant. They can be watered with ice cubes, just like the phalaenopsis orchid, just like the poinsettia, not a problem. Their soil should stay evenly moist to slightly dry as well. And as long as you can keep these leaves nice and green, not yellowing, they will do wonderfully for you. So that's basically holiday houseplants in a nutshell. We have garden guides on our website for this with all the details and so forth. So come and check that out as well. And don't forget to check out the spotlights on the poinsettias and the Christmas cactus. Enjoy.